Hi, everyone. Harry here to talk about today's pretty important decision by a court, this one in Pennsylvania, perhaps as swing a state as swing states get, in the sense that by all calculations, Harris Walls have to win Pennsylvania, and it is probably the state that has the most focus on it in the whole campaign, especially the rural pockets that at least Democrats in the past have tended to neglect. All right, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court issued an important non-ruling, really, I could say, which is there is confusion about the mail-in ballots, which have already been received in plenty. And there are many of them, we don't know exactly how many, but many of them that don't have dates on them. If you've ever done a mail-in, you sign the date you're doing it, and that is a requirement. And the lower courts, spurred by the Republicans, have enforced that requirement and said those votes don't count. But then the lawsuit against has been joined by sort of everyone from Governor Josh Shapiro on down, saying, you need to permit these mail-in ballots to be counted. Many courts have done so. And after all, this voter written date is meaningless, essentially, to determine whether the ballot arrived on time or whether the voter is eligible. You determine that in other ways, and therefore, and this is the legal question involved, rejecting a ballot on that basis, since it's meaningless, should be considered a violation of the state constitution. That's the lawsuit. Nevertheless, Republicans are pressing it hard, saying, it's an important kind of guarantee of the security of the vote and voting it right and the like. Really not, but it's they've calculated, as is the case probably around the country, that the mail-in ballots are more likely to be for Democrats than not. So the lawsuit, Shapiro, but all kinds of sort of good guy groups, diversity groups, urban education funds, League of Women Voters of Pennsylvania, and the like. But there is a general principle that this close to an election, in Pennsylvania that is, this is Pennsylvania law, courts will not intervene. And that's what they said here, just too confusing, too close to the date. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court is very evenly divided, but there was only one dissent register. There was a concurrence and one dissent. So it wasn't along party lines. And I think the court really was saying, we just can't do it this soon before an election. And one of the justices concurred and said that the plaintiffs waited a long time from the ruling below to appeal, and they could have, and that figured in the decision not to grant them relief. There is one possible counterpoint, because there is a lot, it factors in, really, it cuts the same way, because the law in place now permits county election officials to inform people if their mail-in ballots are not being counted, and to permit them to cast what is called a provisional ballot. That means you show up, you cast your ballot, and they will double check. Is there another ballot that you've already cast? If so, they will count that one. If not, the provisional ballot controls. And that's the law in Pennsylvania. Republican political organizations, no surprise, have sued to set that rule to the side, and the Supreme Court on the same day, this is the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, as it declined to get involved in the mail-in ballot controversy directly. That is, to conclude or hold that there's no constitutional violation for a mail-in ballot without a date, and therefore it can't be excluded. They declined to get involved there, leaving the status quo, which is they can be excluded. However, they're hearing an appeal that may have the effect, all this has to be done really quickly, of letting county officials tell voters who have flaws in their mail-in ballots, like they didn't supply the date, that you have a flaw. Show up if you can. Show up. There is one way to cure it. Show up on election day, cast what's called a provisional ballot, and that will count if it turns out that your mail-in ballot does not, as is likely under this law. So an example, and a big one, because in the most important state, I would say, I'm from there, but even so, Pennsylvania, all eyes are on, and there's probably no scenario to a presidential election for Harrison Walls that doesn't include Pennsylvania. Anyway, so that ruling, not everybody's going to avail themselves, even if the Supreme Court does the follow-on principle. Not everyone will avail themselves of the opportunity and show up and cast a provisional ballot and the like. So it definitely will exact some kind of reduction in the mail-in votes that are counted. That's according to the current law, but the plaintiffs have said that's against the Constitution. But it's not going to be decided. So that's the way it goes. It'll have some impact. All of these things, of course, are little impacts in a razor thin, close election. So all of them are fought hard, and they tend to go under the radar, which is why on the important ones like Pennsylvania, I'll be doing YouTubes to at least keep you somewhat in the loop. But that mail-in ballot controversy seems over in Pennsylvania to the extent that a non-dated mail-in ballot will be for this election deficient, notwithstanding the constitutional arguments of the challengers. But there's remains the prospect that with a notification from county election officials, people who have mailed in defective ballots can come on election day, cast provisional ballots, which will be counted. Talk to you later. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video and other Talking Feds content, please take a second to like and subscribe. Talk to you later.